myself, so I run Dell Technologies public sector and enterprise businesses in Ireland. So it's about a $400 million business. We have use cases across all sectors of technology, from cyber, edge, compute, across every different vertical. Gen AI has exploded within Dell and with our customer conversations, and during this morning I'll touch on some examples of what we see going on out in the marketplace. Pass to you, Irina.
Thank you very much, George. Hi everyone, so good to see you all here. I had a very long and varied career across academia and the private sector, and I joined UNICEF, a humanitarian organization, in 2022 because I thought the world was on fire and I wanted to do something good with my skills to, save the world. And at UNICEF, I contribute to the strategic leadership and a lot of advocacy efforts for children's rights, because UNICEF is the United Nations Children's Fund. But we also do a lot of practical hands-on AI projects across our 154 country offices. So I get to see a lot of really great practical applications of AI for good. Marie?
Thanks, Irina. So I'm the CEO and founder of Emotionize AI. So we put the emotional intelligence into artificial intelligence. We build bespoke generative AI models to help improve outcomes for employee engagement and customer support. So it turns out only 36% of us are emotionally intelligent. Every time I say that, everybody's going, is that me or is and we all think it's going to fall from the sky. So basically, we've created a generative AI model that gives you an emotional audit on your communication and helps suggest to you more emotionally intelligent replacement sentences. And ultimately what it does is create much more positive outcomes for employees in the workforce and for customers.
And I did a straw poll last night. I was at an event and I asked people what percentage of people are emotionally intelligent. Everybody thought it was much higher, and we did a little experiment, and actually it turns out you're pretty much spot on. And we're pretty excited about that ourselves in terms of that either customer service or human interaction, so there's definite benefits there. Irina, I'm maybe going to kick off just around AI for global challenges. So there's so much hype around what's going on at the moment, but there's also huge opportunities. Where do you see AI playing a role, particularly in global challenges such as health, energy management, sustainability? What's your thoughts on that?
Fantastic questions. Thanks, George. Again, I think in our pre-chat, we have agreed that AI should bring value, right? We are all interested in new technologies because of the value they contribute to the work that we are doing or the challenges that we need to solve. At UNICEF, we are engaged in so many things. It's children, obviously a very specific mandate, but children are everywhere. So we do health, we do education, we do climate resilience, we do water and sanitation, emergency response, everything. And AI can contribute to all of those sectors and all of those tasks. I'm going to give you just 2 examples as a teaser, but if you're interested in more, please do find me after this talk, and I'd love to grab a coffee with anyone who is interested. So one example is obviously assistive technologies for education, right? Children with disabilities or children in areas where they cannot get access to even start becoming literate. They have problems accessing textbooks, they have problems accessing critical information, including government information, including information in humanitarian contexts where this could be a matter of life and death. So assistive technologies like speech-to-text and text-to-speech, like converting symbols to text, expanding a symbol into a full sentence, machine translation, all of this is valuable for education, is valuable for inclusion across all sectors from health to humanitarian response. And this is something that we can see bringing immense value for children, yes, but then those children grow up to become adults who are fully included in the new digital societies. That is immense value, that is immense impact that we're seeing. Another example is emergency response. So we are building different applications, obviously. Machine translation that I have mentioned already can help us scale the way we create and distribute critical information to many, many languages that go beyond the official 5 UN languages. But there is also things like predicting natural disasters, particularly cyclical natural disasters like droughts and floods, predicting disease outbreaks, predicting how much packages of humanitarian assistance or how many volunteers we would need in specific situations, and also issuing early warnings for people so they can get out of the dangerous areas much quicker. All of this is AI doing this for us on an immense scale and at a much higher speed. So of course we see value. And I'm going to pause here, but I have many more examples. Please come talk to me.
Irina, in our conversation earlier, I was probably amazed at the breadth of what UNICEF do. So UNICEF to me is nearly like a brand I actually didn't fully comprehend, and I know Maria and myself were pretty much blown away.
Yeah, we were.
There's one example I'll talk to from Dell. So we're involved with a charity called the Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. 5% of the reef currently has been mapped, as in photographed or any sort of image detection on that reef. So a solution was put in place with the universities and colleges and schools around an AI model that would allow swimmers, any tourists to take pictures of the reef and send it back into a central model. The AI model then runs over these images and knits them together, identifies different shapes and objects, and that then is put through a portal to allow students and school children actually train the model to tell the model if it's correct or not. So is this coral, is it sponge, what is it? So the mapping of the reef has grown exponentially, and they're now looking to see how they actually conserve the reef based on the information they're getting. And obviously it's exploding every day. So just a really sort of visual example of what's possible, and that's a collaboration with a charity, and then using the power of the crowd to actually train the models. Marie, I wanted to ask you a question just around future outlook, future trends and possibilities. What's your view on such a big topic?
Yeah, it's great to hear, isn't it, the really positive applications of AI. I'm a former TV producer and a journalist, and certainly the media really loves kind of jumping on the apocalyptic stories of AI, you know, and the dystopian future, and robots are taking over the world, and it's just really, it's fantastic to hear of such really great application when it comes to things like saving lives with UNICEF and climate change and healthcare. And you know, it's really interesting where we are. I believe we're at a really important inflection point now where AI is and where the future is heading. And I think we have the power still to really kind of take charge of this technology. The biggest threat in terms of, you know, when it comes to negative things about AI are still people. You know, it's not the AI. AI will only do what you tell it to do.
Yeah.
So people are still the biggest threat when it comes to AI and our use of AI. And that can be deliberate, or it can also be unintentional. So I'm very passionate about where we go in terms of really legislation, George, and you know, guardrails around this. What is an incredibly powerful technology, and there's really interesting things happening. The EU AI Act was signed off by all member states on the 2nd of February, and parts of that are going to be implemented literally this year. The EU is leading the way on legislation around AI, and a lot of people believe it's gone further than they expected. You know, you've got, then obviously the US signed an executive order back in October, Biden did on AI and trustworthy. I think it's just very important wherever we go with AI, and AI for good particularly, and I'm passionate about AI for good and the ethics around AI, but it needs to be far more than voluntary, which is really where it is at the moment. I mean, we've kind of seen where that got us with social media, particularly. You know, we all thought social media 20 years ago was a lovely way of staying in touch with your friends in Australia, and now suddenly we're standing back and going, oh my goodness, It has the potential to undermine democracy. It has a massive impact on our mental health, and particularly our children's mental health. So we have a chance to get this right, and I think in terms of AI for good and what we're seeing though, what's very exciting, and listening to both of you as well, is honestly in 2 years' time we don't even know where we're going to be. Like the capability is phenomenal. I've been working with AI for well over 2 years. I saw the potential of large language models back in 2020. It allowed me to build what we've achieved, and I'm very excited about it. But my goodness, we need to be careful where we're headed, really.
And just to echo that, I think conversations are moving forward so quickly. Businesses are trying to identify the use cases they're going to invest in. That takes time. So at the moment we're in an exploratory phase. Organizations are looking to see, and then they're going to get into execution and scale. When it executes and scale, you're going to start to see a lot of different things happening. We don't even know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that probably leads into the next question for you, Irina. Is there any public perception around AI and trust? And there's definitely guardrails required, but again, what's your view of that area?
Fascinating question. For me, a lot of public perception comes into managing the hype, managing the expectations, because the analogy that I've used in our pre-conference chat was a lot of things that we see coming up, including the video generation models from OpenAI and Google that were released last week and the week before that. A lot of it looks like you're watching a trailer for a movie and it looks amazing and you're super excited for that movie to come out, and then you actually go and watch that movie and you're like, that's not what the trailer has promised. So I'm really looking forward to more people using generative AI in particular, and using AI tools that are more practical for data analysis or helping them in their daily lives more broadly. Because what I'm looking forward to is AI becoming as normal and being perceived as a tool, not a savior, not some existential threat that is going to wipe out humanity, but as a tool like calculators, like cars, like planes, a normal technology that is part of our everyday lives, that we need to regulate and monitor, but that does not remove the responsibility from humans to take responsibility for their decisions, right? So for me, in terms of public perceptions, it all comes down to don't trust AI, don't expect it to be a miracle. Don't expect Gen AI, large language models to help you with knowledge management, because it does not create knowledge, it creates language patterns, right? So that understanding is something that I think would be super important for us to move from fear-mongering and hype and talking on very heightened terms to, yeah, this is part of our lives, good. We can manage that, but there are practical steps that we need to implement to manage that, and risk management is not the same as fear-mongering. So regulations, human oversight, but also improving digital skills. Like, this is the audience of specialists. I'm fairly sure that everybody here already knows what I'm talking about. But when you go back to your companies, do you have the same levels of digital literacy? I'm going to bet not. What do you do? What do we do? Because it's also a shared responsibility, and this is the third part of public perception. It is for us as experts to help our companies to understand, but also to help society and legislators to understand what could or could not be done with AI, and how to regulate it and how to implement it ethically and responsibly.
Great answer, Irina. I love your analogy of the film where you watch the trailer and you're so excited, and then 3.5 hours later you're wondering what happened. But I think that's a great analogy, and I think even there's certain tools out there now from various technology companies, and I know the first few days is very exciting, and then after week 2 you sort of go, right, okay, I get it, and you move on. So there's a bit of a hype cycle and then into a valley of despair. But that will mature and it'll move on. Marie, I think we'll pivot into the education piece now, because I think that's important for all of society. How do we upskill? How do we educate ourselves? What way should we think about that challenge?
I think it's really important. I think the application of generative AI in education is particularly interesting, and I think we need to really look carefully at where we're headed. I mean, there's talk about locking students out of, into exam halls without ChatGPT so they could do the exam, whereas are we looking at a future where ChatGPT is just going to do their job better anyway? What way are we going to do this? It's interesting, my son is training to be a carpenter at the moment. He's very creative and he's dyslexic, and he's loving it, and it's a very creative industry, but I'm always really struck, this is a trade that goes back millennia. I mean, Jesus was a carpenter, yet there are people in university at the moment who are learning skills that actually could be less valuable than my son's, and we've never been in that situation before. And I find that really interesting in terms of there is actually a Gen AI. We need to look very carefully at professions. And I do believe there's a lot of scaremongering around this space too. I do believe Gen AI will create lots of other jobs. I think the best word when it comes to education is synthesis. I think we need to look at the word synthesis and how we embrace AI to do something more, efficiently, analyze something much faster in a few hours, which would take a research team months before this, and allow them to. There's a huge, fantastic opportunity for creativity and to allow people to really be far more creative and allow AI to expedite all of that other work. But I think it's really important. I think the phrase that really jumped out at me for everybody, George, and I just don't mean people in university. I mean people in every business, people, looking at their job and looking ahead. Just because you don't know about AI doesn't mean AI doesn't know about you. And that's what you really have to think about. What is going to happen next? And you need, it is foolish and naive to sit back and actually just ignore this, because it's moving at an exponential rate. And where we are today, AI will never be as primitive as it is right now. Yeah. And the gains they're not taking months, they're taking weeks. Yeah. So I think it's up to all of us, and I think we need to have a proper debate in society, but it's up to all of us to educate ourselves.
Absolutely, and I think when we were talking earlier, we were talking about some use cases. There's things that are happening where you have to be aware of the cyber elements relating to AI. For example, now your voice can be synthesized, so if you use your voice as your password,
good luck.
Good luck. So my voice is my password, my voice is being recorded. What's to stop my voice being used against me because it's on the internet? So there's a lot, so educating children in terms of all of that, not just children, but huge scope there.
But I also think transparency is really, really important in all of this. And what's really interesting about the AI at the moment, and it's something we're very passionate about at Emotionize AI, and we're all seeing what's happening in the courts at the moment. And the courts are a really interesting place to see where Gen AI is going. So the New York Times is suing OpenAI because ChatGPT has been trained on their articles. We need to watch this case very carefully. There's big implications for copyright law and where we are and where data is going. But I'm really passionate about the data, because at Emotionize we create all of our own data. So that is really important to us. We have a team of writers creating emotionally intelligent data every day. But what I would say is, if we don't imbue these models with human qualities and emotional and empathetic qualities, and that's the inflection point I'm talking about, then I think it's really important we're at that inflection point now.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Our timer hasn't worked here, so I'm now just getting a nod from the back. So 60 seconds maybe for each of us in terms of the future collaboration and partnerships. And I think that's a natural pivot into grabbing coffee with people afterwards. Where do you see that collaboration and partnership piece with AI for good?
Just come talk to me. UNICEF has a venture fund. What a UN agency has ventures? Yes, we do. We invest in startups. We invest in AI for good very deliberately, because we don't expect to do all of that job ourselves. We want to help building local capacity. We want to help building open source technologies that can be used beyond what we can possibly ever do, and just expand it across the whole world. And we are also working with many tech corporations and technical partners on just doing things together, because again, we don't expect that we ourselves are going to change the world, but I firmly believe that doing things together we can. So please come talk to me about what you are doing, because I'm very interested in hearing about that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Marie?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I'm really glad to be a part of what's happening. And but I think absolutely back to just what I said. I think we're at an inflection point. We need to imbue these models with human attributes to really identify them. But I would say to everybody, educate yourselves and your children as much as you possibly can, and then you will be ahead, and you will be informed, and you'll be ready for what is basically been described as the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah. I guess to wrap as well, we see it as an ecosystem play in Dell Technologies. In Ireland, we've over 5,000 people, 3 sites. We're test bedding a lot of the technologies in country. So we're actually looking for SMEs to reach out to us with interesting examples where we will pilot those technologies in our sites. We also have access to global customers flying into these sites daily. So big banks, pharma, government, US, Irish. So we've got a great showcase there. But for me, collaboration is going to be absolutely key, and it is 100% an ecosystem play. So that's us this morning. Hope you enjoyed our conversation.